In 1983, my telephone interest was dormant. Everything I liked about the network I'd pretty much researched already, and all the old stuff was being replaced by newer stuff that was not as interesting. I just wasn't playing with the phone anymore. But then something happened. My friend Les, who at that time was working as a communications consultant for the state of Georgia, had Centrex service at his office. Centrex was a private telephone system that is central office based. In other words, it works like a private branch exchange, but it's actually coming from the same switch that serves regular phone lines. The lines have a different class of service so that you have to dial 9 for outside calls and just the last 4 digits for extensions within the company. Now, the first implementation of this kind of Centrex was done in number 5 crossbar, but it was fairly rare. By this time, 1983, most central office Centrex was done in number 1/1A ESS. This is a processor-controlled analog switch. I'll refer to it in the rest of the series as number 1, but it's mostly 1A. The only difference is that it's a newer processor for the same sort of hardware. Now, when these number 1 ESS offices started replacing all the panels in New York City during the 1970s, Ben and I thought that this was the switch of the future. Turns out it was just the switch of the 1980s. To illustrate just how analog this thing was, here is a call from a prepay coin phone served by number 1 ESS in 1982. You'll notice all the clicks and squeaks and other noises that clearly indicate this is an analog switch, especially the sounds that it makes when I hang up and the coin returns. You may have noticed there that as I was dialing, you could hear other customers dialing numbers themselves, and that crosstalk feature actually occurred more on the newer ESSs than on the older ones. Very analog. Now, in Centrex, one of the features was called Call Hold. Call Hold is the feature that nobody ever figured out how to use. It basically allowed you to make 2 separate calls, often 2 outgoing calls, on one phone line. But rather than conferencing them together, you could switch back and forth from one to the other. You would make your first call,
This is the first edition of Newswire for Thursday, May 26th.
and then flash, get a recall dial tone, and dial a code. When you would dial the code, you'd get another recall dial tone, onto which you could then dial a phone number. While your first call remained on hold, this second call would go through. And then, if you wanted to go back and forth between the 2 calls, all you had to do was to flash, get a recall dial tone, and dial the call hold code again.
Normally, the FCC requires 90 days notification.
And that way you could go back and forth.
Prior to such a test. Headlining our news today. They asking that the period be cut to 15 days and
The code at Les's office was 111. But as I said, nobody really knew how to use call hold. It was actually useful for a situation in which you have to put one person on hold and then go call and consult with somebody else, and then switch back and forth a few times without ever bringing the 2 together. In 1983, the Centrex serving Les's office began to have call waiting available. Now, as call waiting began to become available on Centrex, it had to work in concert with call hold. So the way you answered a call waiting beep was different on Centrex. You'd be talking to one person, and then you'd get a call waiting beep. Then when you flashed your hook, instead of answering the call, you would get a recall dial tone, onto which you would have to dial the call hold code, and that would switch you to your second call.
Hello. Hello.
After that, to switch back and forth between your 2 calls, you had to flash, get a recall dial tone, and dial the call hold code again. So when a call waiting beep came in, you would flash and get a recall dial tone. But you didn't have to answer the call waiting right then. You could also dial a number so as to transfer your existing call to another station.
Hello.
I've got a call for you. You want to take it?
Well, I guess so.
Okay, here goes.
And then go get your call waiting.
Hello.
Hey.
That opened up some interesting possibilities. And in talking with Les and having him dial things, it became apparent that there was something about the way call waiting had been implemented that was a little bit peculiar. This peculiarity was generic to the entire country, so all the number 1 ESSs had the same problems. And we first discovered that something was a bit funny when one day Les got a call waiting beep. And instead of just answering it, he flashed, got a recall dial tone, and dialed the local time number. He noticed that when he flashed again, he got another recall dial tone. And so he dialed the time number again. And then he flashed again and got another recall dial tone and dialed the time number again. Now, common sense would suggest that each time he got a recall dial tone in this way, the previous call had been discarded and he was starting over again. But that turned out not to be the case. In fact, as he was off dialing the time over and over, I was hearing some very interesting telltale sounds. That tick. Now, the first time it happened was 30 seconds after Les originally put me on hold and started calling the time over and over, but 10 seconds after that first tick, there was another one. This one wasn't quite as loud as the first one and sounded a little tinnier. And then 10 seconds after the second tick, there was... Each tick was softer and tinnier than the last, and I got the distinct feeling that each tick was somehow further down the line than the last one. What could be going on here? The ticks, always a staple of what phone freaks listen for, were definitely telling me something. Once the incoming call that had given him the beep in the first place dropped, and Les flashed his hook again, he didn't get a recall dial tone. Instead, he got me, but the sound quality wasn't very good.
Okay, it took one flash after I got to the thing.
It's funny, the tinny quality of it.
Yeah, I think it's just trunks connected together.
Trunks to and from what?
They're all just connected to some random point, or all connected to junctures or whatever.
I'll be interested to find out ultimately.
At first, we weren't sure just what this phenomenon was, but one thing was clear. It was a little bit like the old tandem stacking from the 1970s, because when Les flashed his hook switch a second time, this is what would happen.
Okay, here goes. Can we talk?
Oh, this is just...
Now, you know me, I wouldn't let something like this go unexplained. I had to understand exactly what was going on. And almost as if on cue, Southern Bell came to the rescue because they decided to file a tariff for a new service known as Prestige Communications Package. Prestige was a special set of features for small businesses and even residences that wanted to have everything telephone-wise. Now, it wasn't a lot of features compared to the big feature packages that they have today. But what it was Centrex for residences and small businesses. What prompted the Bell system coming out with this was Judge Green's decision not to allow them to sell PBXs anymore, and so they had to have other CO-based services to make money on, and this was one of the ideas they came up with. Well, now, in your home, you could have your own Centrex. They set it up so that you didn't have to dial 9 first for outside calls, and calls within your Prestige system were accomplished by dialing star plus a 2-digit code. Another nice thing about Prestige is that you could combine 2 different customers into the same Prestige system as long as they were in the same CO, and it just so happened that Les and I were in the same central office, though we lived in different locations. So we became Southern Bell's first Prestige customers in Georgia. I knew that once I had one of these Centrex lines in my apartment, I was going to discover everything there was to know about it. And suddenly I was interested in phones again. There was really something fascinating to research. So I eagerly awaited the day when Prestige would arrive at my apartment and I could get down to business learning how Centrex worked and discovering the various oddities about it. In the meantime, Les and I continued to play with this rather odd phenomenon, where whenever he would call the time or any other local number that answered and hung up by itself, over and over, while a call waiting was present, Les would end up talking to me from the other end of what was clearly a long stack of... we didn't know what. But the disconnect was always rather spectacular, and we did know how to have fun doing that.
Hello.
Okay,
Now, do I have to flash to come back?
when you flash, it will,
Automatically?
it will fall down.
I mean, this is only about 12 or so.
Alright, this time for my tape, hold down a touch tone while you're coming back.
You don't want me to go, Geronimo!
Go ahead and do that. That'll be fine.
All right. Geronimo!
Well, in May 1983, the day arrived when we did get converted to Centrex in our homes. Both Les and I were put in the same system, and my research began. And by the way, the generic name for Prestige was Multi-Line Variety Package, which still exists in some Baby Bell companies, I think, though certainly the little quirks that we discovered do not, even in the remaining 1A ESS switches that have it. The Prestige, also called MVP, package consisted of the following features. First of all, you know about the call hold feature. I described that before, and that is one of the Prestige features. The call hold code was *9. Three-way calling was renamed Conference, but it was the same as on a regular phone line, except that it also had the transfer feature, so that if you took either an incoming or an inside call and added on a number, you could just hang up either before or after the call had completed, and the call would transfer. It would stay up even though it had left your line. So three-way calling was the same. It was just called Conference, and it had transfer. Call waiting had the same name, but it worked differently because you had to dial the call hold code to actually make it work. There was a version of Speed Calling 8 for Prestige, except it was called Convenience Dialing, and it only had 6 numbers in it. #2 through #7 were the codes, and the reason for the difference in the codes is too boring to explain here, but there was no post-dial delay in the implementation of speed calling lists with Prestige. The short list was used for convenience dialing, numbers you would program yourself, and it was #2 through #7. Meanwhile, the long list, 20 through 49, was used for calls within the Centrex itself, and those were accessed by dialing *20 through *49. Again, no post-dial delay. Calls within the system were referred to in some tariffs and instructions as intercom calls. And in my system with Les, *20 was Les, *21 was me. And then there was call pickup. If Les's phone was ringing, I could answer it by picking up my line and dialing *8. Now, by working with these features, I very quickly discovered that Centrex was full of problems. There were a lot of things that only half worked, and it was so bad that Les and I decided to make up a little tape to send to a contact in Bell Labs to get the problems fixed. The tape we sent to Bell Labs detailed a number of situations that a subscriber could get into in which the switching system did not work as advertised. At the time we made that tape, we were just demonstrating the bugs and how to reproduce them, and we really hadn't had time to think about what might be causing these bugs. That really wasn't our department. But upon examining all this stuff many years later, and far after it's too late, I've come to understand that really all of this stuff that's detailed in this series comes down to just 4 bugs. Just 4. Here's the part of the tape that dealt with the first one.
Alright, this tape is an attempt to demonstrate serious bugs in Centrex. Here's the first bug that I want to demonstrate. I am in an important call with you. I called you within my Centrex, and in fact, again, it makes no difference who's calling who on the original call. But in this case, I'm calling within the Centrex, and this is a very, very important call. And now another person is going to dial my number. And this other person, in fact, is calling from within my office.
Not only that, his fingers as big as his feet.
He's calling within the office, however, he's not calling within my Centrex. And, hello, important call?
Yes.
I'm going to have to put you on hold and get rid of this jerk who's beeping in on me.
Oh.
Who are you calling a jerk?
Okay, so now I have flashed, gotten the special dial tone, and dialed the hold call to answer the call from the jerk. Mr. Jerk?
What?
I know exactly what you need. You need to talk to our Jerk Management Bureau across town.
Oh, yes, okay.
Now, the tariffs say that I can transfer any intercom or incoming call to any other call, any outgoing call.
Now, what's the tariff?
So I'm going to now attempt to connect you to the Jerk Management Bureau across town.
Money, but don't want to come in for a loan?
This is a normal number. Mr. Jerk?
What?
Apply for a
Okay,
personal line of
here's the
credit.
Jerk
You may
Management
never have
Bureau.
to
You
come to
guys
the bank
talk,
for a loan
okay?
again.
Hi. So sorry to put you on hold. I got this jerk on the line, but he had to go talk to the Jerk Management Bureau. So
You used your overpriced Centrex feature to transfer him.
oh yeah, well I talked to both parties momentarily.
You know, if that transfer didn't work, he'll probably call you back outright. You know how jerks are.
Yeah, but I'm sure it worked because after all, the tariffs say that I should be able to transfer incoming calls.
Well, yes, that's true.
Oh no, hold on. Hello? What are you doing here? Didn't I transfer you to the Jerk Management Bureau?
Well, I talked to him for a minute and they hung up.
Well, that leads me to only one conclusion, and that is that the transfer feature cannot be relied upon, and therefore I can't help you. Goodbye.
What?
Hello?
I think that guy used to work as CEO.
In any event, so that is the situation where you attempt to, now again, he was calling from within the office, but not within the Centrex. And the same thing would happen if he were calling from another office. Now, I don't know whether you can successfully do, well, let's find out. Call me back on your POTS line in my office.
Okay.
Okay? You're
This
calling.
is a call from the POTS.
Yes. So you're calling me from POTS in my central office. Now, let's have a jerk call from the Centrex. Call my number from within the Centrex, and I'll see if I can transfer him out. Hello there.
Do you know they give Centrexes to jerks?
Apparently so. Let me see if I can transfer you away. Mr. Jerk? Yeah, I'm going to attempt to transfer you, and you let me know whether it worked there. I should be able to hang up now, but just to make it consistent, I'm going to wait till it answers.
Come to Bank of the South for a personal line of credit to fit your needs.
Well, what do you know?
It worked.
Yes, Mr. Jerk is talking to him.
Okay. Okay, this is a brand new call, and you're calling me from a POTS line in my office. You could also be calling me from a number in another office, and I don't know about within a Centrex. So this is a POTS line in the same office, and you need to be connected to our office across town.
But I bet you can get a call waiting before you can transfer.
Yeah, well, I'm about to transfer you right now. Now, what was that number? Now, what I'm going to try to do is to transfer you and then go get my call.
Money, but don't want to come in
Gonna
for
hang
a
up
loan?
now. Hello?
Well, hello.
Okay, so this is the second call I'm on, and the first call should have been happily transferred away, and
Well, it is if you like to talk to terminations.
what have you got over there?
Well, now I just got a dial tone.
So, when you have a call waiting present, answered or unanswered, makes no difference. You cannot transfer your first call to an outside number. And I don't know whether you can transfer, you may not be able to do anything properly.
Well, it's very important. This is something that we need to find out because, for most Centrexes, if you can transfer to another Centrex number, that's what most Centrexes do, not including the multi-line package or whatever they call this thing.
Well, let's find out. You are calling me from within the Centrex, are you?
I sure am.
Okay. But I guess we need to start with a POTS call and try to transfer you to the Centrex. So,
Well, I'll call you with a POTS call.
okay. Okay, you're calling me from POTS in my office. And now I'm going to get a call waiting beep. You, of course, are an incoming call, and I need to transfer you to the proper department, so I should still be able to do that now that I've got a beep. Let's try it.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, I've got an incoming call for you. You want to take it?
Well, I guess so. I mean, even though I'm calling this jerk on the other side, but that's all right.
Yeah, okay, here goes. Of course, that complicates things, but never mind.
No.
Hello, did you get it? This is my, interrupting call.
Yes, that worked.
That did work.
And that's the important one. That's the one that that most Centrex users will have to make.
Uh-huh.
And that works.
Okay, so it's fortunate that that works. So again, I guess it's a matter of not properly allowing an incoming to an outgoing when there's a call waiting present.
Apparently so. Yeah, because the outgoing is the difference here.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I transferred you to, it was still an incoming from within the office, and I transferred you to the Centrex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call waiting on Centrex was an afterthought. Also, the idea of transferring incoming calls to outgoing calls was an afterthought. Originally, Centrex didn't do that. When they instituted call waiting, they forgot to make sure that the extended definition of what can be transferred applied to situations where there was call waiting in effect. Thus, when call waiting was present, you could only transfer calls to stations in the Centrex. Not very interesting, and that deals with a lot of the bug situations that we were talking about on that tape to Bell Labs. I'll call it the transfer permissions bug, and I'll dismiss it at this point because it's not that interesting.
There's one other thing I want to demonstrate about this. Have the jerk beep in on me again. Okay, now, of course, I'm talking on my first important call right now, and I'm going to get the
You're not going to leave me, are you? This is important.
Well, I'm going to have to go get rid of the jerk. Hold on.
Hello?
Oh, not you again.
That's right.
I've got to transfer you to the Jerk Management Bureau. Hold on.
What are you doing?
Oh, they're busy. Hold on, I'll have to try again. Now, notice that I was able to drop the busy signal and try again.
Good evening. Keep the camel's nose out of the tent. Say no to measured service.
And I was able to drop the call, and I can keep doing this. So it's interesting that on my second incoming, on my, what do you call this, the call waiting call, on my call waiting call, I can use my freeway properly, and I can make repeated attempts, and there's absolutely no problem. The only problem with it is that I'm supposed to be able to transfer an incoming call from anywhere to an outgoing call, and I can't do that in this condition. Now here's the second bug. I'll call you within the Centrex.
Extension 20.
Now, we're talking within the Centrex here, and what I need to do is to put you on hold and go consult someone else. Now, this person is in another central office. Very important. This must be someone in another central office. And now I'm going to put you on hold and go consult him.
Consultant in an outside office.
Mr. Consultant in an outside office, I have some information that I need from you and blah, blah, blah.
Woof woof.
Well, that means you don't have enough information. So I'll go back and ask my buddy in the Centrex about that. Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Now, regarding the issue of woof woof, what should I tell him?
Bow wow.
Hold on. He says bow wow.
Well, poo-poo on him.
Well, based on that, I'm sure you want to talk to someone within my Centrex, right?
That's right.
So let me try. Oh, mercy. Hello, it's busy.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Let me try again. Oh dear, I can't try again.
Goodness.
All right, well, let me see if I can go back to my friend in the, oh, I can't even do that, can I? In fact, all I can do is hang up on you.
Well, that's probably a good move anyway. My rates are much too high.
The interesting thing we found out about that bug is that a second call within this office, but outside of the Centrex, worked okay. So let me do that. I'm going to put you on hold and call the nearby consultant.
Okay. Conveniently located consultant.
Yeah, you're in my central office, but not in the Centrex.
That's right.
And let me just do the same thing I did before and go back to the first party. You're in the Centrex.
I am indeed.
I'm going to go back to the nearby consultant. You're the consultant in my office, not in the Centrex.
That's true.
And I'm going to try to connect you to an extension in my Centrex.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it's busy.
Uh-oh.
So let me see, and I dropped it, so let me see if I can get another dial tone. Ah, so you're in the Centrex here. Mm-hmm. And I can go back and forth. Very interesting bug.
What seemed strange to me at the time was that this bug would happen if you were calling a consultant across town, but would not happen if that consultant were in the same central office, nor would it happen if your second call was an incoming call. Now, it turns out that this is a bug that goes through the entire system and is actually one of two that is responsible for Well, that sounds fun, and it's indeed this bug that makes that possible, along with another one. But that's the only fun thing about it. More typically, this particular bug, which I'll call the unwanted bridge bug, and I'll explain what that means later on. This particular bug would leave you trapped where you needed to get a recall dial tone and you couldn't get one. Another thing that it would do sometimes is put you in a situation where your call was still connected but you couldn't hear it. This is demonstrated in the two examples that follow.
So now I'll demonstrate the most recently discovered problem. First, I'm going to take a souped outgoing call and transfer it to another station in the Centrex.
This sounds like a busy signal, but it's not. This is actually a completed phone call to a busy test number, which answers and plays the busy signal noise. Sorry about that. This was obvious in 1983, but, 25 years later, how are you supposed to know? This is not a busy signal. It is a busy test number, and so it will behave the same way as would a call to a person who had answered his phone.
Okay, I'm going to just hang up now, and of course, this call will continue to ring on that extension until either someone picks it up with call pickup or actually answers the line. All right, now I've made a brand new call, and, let me put this on hold and go get that ringing phone. And there we have it. I've now answered the call that was on that phone that was ringing. And now let me go back to my first call. And now I'll go back to my second call. Oh dear. It's not there anymore. Actually, it is there. It's just that we can't hear it anymore. And there you have it. In a little while, I'm going to see if this occurs in other situations, but this particular situation is that somebody took a souped outgoing call and transferred it to a ringing extension, and it's sitting there on their ringing, and then somebody puts an existing call on hold and picks up that ringing call. And you can talk once, but if you switch back to your original call and then come back again, you are obscured from it. I'm going to hang up over here. It even rings me back for nothing.
And now here's the same problem in a slightly different configuration. First thing I'm going to do is to establish a regular old call on my line. And while I'm talking on that call, someone else in my Centrex is going to transfer a souped outgoing call to me. And, of course, it's going to come in on call waiting. They are going to hang up right after dialing my extension, so they're not going to stay on the line to hear me answer it. Okay, now they're going to transfer that call to me.
Dial a prayer. An outreach of Atlanta Unity Church. My name is Jay Bishop.
All right, they have now hung up,
to talk about
and I'm now going to answer that call. And there's the call. Now I'm going to go back to the first one.
But it may take all.
And now back to the second one. And there we have it, nothing. So there you see the same problem again, except this time it was with call waiting instead of call pickup. By the way, that busy signal was a souped busy test.
Now, obviously, it gets a little more interesting than this. In fact, it starts to get into outrageous as we begin to make 4- and 5-way calls from phones that weren't designed to do it, as we take existing 3-way calls and split the two parties apart while continuing to talk to each of them, which phones weren't designed to do, and so on. And we'll slowly get into that stuff starting in part 2.